Tonight, on a very special Bigfooty Grand Final podcast, we review the games from the preliminary finals, we talk about the latest in AFL news and events, and we preview the big match itself between Hawthorn and Fremantle on Saturday at the MCG. All this and more coming right up.
Melbourne, let's show the world what we're made of! Bound for glory! Life's tough, so what? I'm alive. I've been down, seen hard times, I survived. You know I learned these lessons at the school of hard knocks, and I know that life's worth living. Can't hold me down, can't hold me back. Sing, bound for glory. Oh, we're bound for glory. A heartfelt victory is a warrior's destiny. Bound for glory. Today we are. I fight and I win, 'cause I'm strong. Yes, we stand tall, our heads high, 'cause we belong. Yes, and I learned these lessons as the pain made me strong. And I know that life's worth living, so I know what's right, I know what's wrong. Sing, Melbourne! Oh, we're bound for glory. A heartfelt victory is a warrior's destiny. Bound for glory, you and I. Oh, you can't hold back the tide when it starts to turn.
And the pain made us strong. I know what's right. I know what's wrong.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the grand final edition of the Bigfooty podcast. And I am, of course, the Wookiee. The sound you can hear in the background is a pile of idiots that have joined me tonight on the podcast, as usual, with Messenger being the Hawthorn representative for the evening,
Good evening, one and all.
and his diametric opposite for the evening will be Seppo.
Hey guys, how are ya?
And Seppo, of course, a Fremantle man. And the neutral crew tonight, ODN.
You know it's grand final week when you see Mike Brady being Mike. Sorry, Mike Brady being thawed out.
And
What is going on?
rejoining us after a couple of weeks hiatus, just to calm down and get on the angry pills a little bit. Prosecutor's back.
I am the Colts. Hello. Glad to be back.
And so, look, I thought we'd get underway with perhaps some highlights from the weekend. And obviously, I think Seppo's the one to start with here. Seppo, what do you got, mate?
Oh, highlights from the weekend was obviously...
and bear in mind, we're operating under a short time frame here, so...
No worries. Well, I've only got 5 minutes then to talk about how good Freo's pressure was against Sydney. It's some of the best I've seen, and just that memorable moment from the game was just the relentless forward pressure and the tackle upon tackle, and unfortunately BT destroyed the commentary in that nice passage of play where I think Zach Clark and then Barlow and then Muzungu and then Ballantyne all jumped on one with a not double, not triple, but quadruple tackle. That was my memorable moment from the prelim final.
All right, Messenger, what was yours, mate?
Oh, I had two, Wookie. I had two highlights. The first one was beating Geelong on Friday night, and the second one was beating Geelong on Sunday to win the VFL Grand Final. So that was double whammy on the Cats. And just an interesting historical note, Michael Osborne, who's probably played his last game in brown and gold, was the only one on the field who'd played in both of Box Hill's VFL premierships, the 2002 and 2013 flag. So nice little way to bookend a career.
Excellent. And ODN, your highlights from the weekend?
Oh, look, this you've got to love the romance of a team making the grand final for the first time. So, it's good for Freo fans, Freo fans to feel that. I'm a bit of a rat for Brian Lake, so I'm glad that he's going to experience the grand final as well. So, good on all of them.
Yep. And Prosecutor, you got any highlights?
Yeah, last Monday night, the Brownlow medal count, I had a fantastic time sitting there and cheering on Dane Swan. Any victory speech coming from him would have had to been aided by an interpreter and maybe a wheelchair, but it was compulsive viewing. I don't know if any of you saw the sideshow that was Dane Swan and his missus, but fair to say that the Rat Pack was out in full force on Monday night.
Was Dane's missus part of the Rat Pack that night?
She looked like she'd have a couple.
Oh,
I think she had a couple, all right.
Oh,
we're
boy.
venturing into unsavoury territory very early on.
It's fair to say that the Brownlow is almost unwatchable television now.
Exactly. It was a car crash effect with Dane Swan.
I'd rather go to jail than watch the Brownlow. Yeah.
It came
I
close.
turn it on at 10:30 and see who won, and then go to bed.
It did come close to beating Big Brother in the ratings.
Close, not close enough. But seriously, where else can you see Aaron Edwards feeding Dustin Martin grapes?
Exactly. Normally it's a different kind of food or biscuit, if you will.
Brownie.
Settle down. All right, my highlight from the weekend, probably the Freo guys showing a touch of class when they clapped off Jude Bolton in his last game. Just at the end of the game there, I thought that was a very nice touch, and given that they'd won and they had every right to celebrate, just the lineup as Bolton went off was very impressive and very sportsmanlike, so kudos to the Freo guys for that. And also Ablett's Brownlow, and the look on Eddie's face, which must have been there. I didn't actually watch it because I can't watch a Brownlow, it's just too tedious for me. But yeah. So good week all round. But yeah, I thought the Freo guys were very classy in victory, and that was how you should show a good long servant of the game off.
Indeed, couldn't agree more.
Yeah. So there's been a bit of news, just a little bit, as we've discussed, Ablett winning his second Brownlow and everything like that. So we don't need to go into that. Ken Hinkley was named the AFL Coaches Association Coach of the Year on Tuesday night. I don't think anyone can really argue with that, unless Seppo's got an argument to make for Ross Lyon over it.
No, I'm happy with Hinkley. I think he deserves it. Although, in retrospect, maybe if Lyon does win the flag with us, I'd say he's probably a better coaching effort this year. But Hinkley definitely deserves it for getting Port where they are after their turnaround.
Yep.
I think it's one thing to take a good team and make them better, which is I think what Ross Lyon's done this year. But Port Adelaide were pathetic last year. They were pathetic, and he's the turnaround, the improvement he's put into that list in 12 months is nothing short of amazing. I mean, the next step up is much more difficult for them, but to get them from easy beats to finalists in 12 months is a pretty substantial body of work.
I think let's not forget, this is a guy that was overlooked for so many coaching jobs as well. Like, he was the second choice for everybody. Like, he was the second choice at Gold Coast behind Guy McKenna. He was overlooked for Carlton. He was overlooked at other clubs, including Port. You know, like, and then to come in and take that club to where it went this year, I think it's a big thing.
So here's a question: who's the next second choice? Who's the next Ken Hinkley sitting out there? The guy who gets overlooked every now and then, who should have a job.
Alan Richardson.
All right. Yeah, there's Alan Richardson, and I think perhaps one interesting one I reckon is going to be Simon Goodwin, because he has been fantastic with Essendon, but now he's got that taint where apparently Brisbane were, very interested in him, but however the recommendations from apparently key AFL industry insiders was that Simon Goodwin was tainted goods and shouldn't be associated with the role. So I think he'll join. And then you got Adam Simpson as well. and Scott
Yeah.
Burns.
Yeah, Simpson's been touted for
and
Oscars.
Sumich. Isn't Peter Sumich?
I wouldn't
Yeah,
rate him as a real sort of classy sort of coach you'd actually want to come in and really do wonders at a club. He's a great assistant coach, but I'd put a lot of those other guys you've just mentioned as obviously prime candidates for the next Hinkley.
The guys that come up every time there's a coaching appointment to be made are guys like Alan Richardson, Scott Burns, in particular, Adam Simpson in recent times. But yeah, and with there's only the West Coast job to be settled now, I think. So
I'm not sure. Adam
the
Simpson-
Essendon job too, if you want to go down that route. But
uh,
that's pretty much Mark Thompson's if he wants it. So
Well, I was under the impression that Mark Harvey was signed, sealed, and delivered a few days ago. What's going on there?
who knows? From what I understand, though, that Harvey still has one more interview to go. They were planning to announce on the Crichton Medal Night this coming Wednesday, but alas, Mark Thompson's reconsidered, I think. So whether that's just a bit of red tape now and announce him or not, we'll have to see.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely convinced on that, to be honest, though, with Mark Thompson. I don't want him to come back into the role if he's going to have to be persuaded into it. He's one of those people that his heart's got to want to be in it if he's going to do it, and if he's had to be pressured into it, then I don't want him to do the job, to be honest. But that's his judgment to call, and I'll trust him to be able to make up his mind and not feel pressured to do it. So
It's an interesting U-turn that late, where he just didn't want to do it and his heart wasn't in it, and it's all too hard, and then all of a sudden he's going to put his hand up for it.
well, he's kind of gone through those classic signs of coming to accept your problem. He's gone through the anger, he's gone through the denial.
The 7 stages of grief.
Yeah, the 7 stages. He's come to acceptance that, yeah, maybe I should do this.
all right. Up in Brisbane, Justin Lepich has been named as the coach of the Brisbane Lions, which was probably an outside chance, really. He wasn't really mentioned in anything.
Well,
I
Neil
find that
Craig
a
was the
downside.
name going around, wasn't it?
Yeah, I reckon it's a down step from having Voss there. You'd think that had someone lined up to get rid of him, and the names that were thrown around before, like once it happened, you think, okay, fair enough, they're going to go and upgrade and get rid of Vossi, but to appoint him, I think it's almost a step down or an interim step, so real feel sorry for Brisbane next year in terms of their coaching development.
You got to feel sorry for Voss as well, though. I mean, here we go. They make a big song and dance about going out and targeting someone in particular, and what they end up doing is getting one of his old teammates who, who's untried as well. It's a bit like, well,
I don't know.
They-
I
they-
reckon-
They stuffed it up, and then they had to make it palatable by bringing in somebody that the Brisbane fans would like. Simple as
More
that.
or less, yeah.
I stand by the fact that I just don't believe Michael Voss's record really justified giving him another long-term contract. I
definitely.
think-
I agree.
and so really, I mean, you can argue about whether they got rid of Voss because they thought they could get Ruse, or whether they literally just said, well, we're not going to give you a contract next year. And then they went out for the best candidate they could get. And I think that's a bit overblown, the whole, they've been mean to Vossi sort of thing. They basically treaded water for,
I don't think
for
it's
3 or 4 years.
I don't think they're getting flack for treating Vossi mean so much as they are for not having anyone ready afterwards. So like they basically tried to do a Carlton, but without the Malthouse guy waiting. Like Carlton had all the for one of a for all the charades and stuff that went on last year, they obviously had Malthouse lined up from the word go. And that's how you offload a favourite son. You have a guy ready who's going to take the attention off that, whereas when you offload a guy like Voss, who it probably infinitely means more to Brisbane than Ratton did at Carlton, you've got to have the big name to take over, and they didn't have that name. They never had the name.
I disagree. I just think that that you make the decision on him regardless of who the replacement might be, and then you pick the best guy. Now, yes, he's a favourite son, but I actually think that shows some maturity for a football club to be able to say, okay, he's a favourite son, but he's not doing his job.
Did they have a process? Who else did they interview?
I don't know who they've interviewed.
Well, I mean, we're not hearing about it, so it does suggest that Lepage has been airlifted into that position just because the board's under a bit of under siege, and just to try to placate the members. That's what it seems like.
There was a few candidates who were mentioned who had an interview. Obviously Lepage, but I know Simon Goodwin had one. I think, was it Tudor had one, and Simpson. Neil Craig did. He was considered up until a few days ago to be the likely successor until Lepage took over. So there's been a few, but this whole process though does seem like one giant cock up. Especially the way they announced it too, to try and slip it in under the Essendon's. Was it the Essendon charges, or is it the sanctions that they slipped it in under?
The day the charges were announced, I think. Or the day the sanctions were announced.
The sanction. It might have been the sanctions, but to slip it in like that, and they did it the night of their gala, which was, it's their biggest off-field social night of the year. So it was just poorly handled, and it screamed of just trying to chuck it in while the news cycle was full on. And I think it's a testament to Angus. Is it Angus Johnson?
Yeah, he's not very popular at Brisbane at the moment.
Oh, he's going to be welcome back there for years and years. And you people say that James Hird is deluded. Well, last time I checked, mediation talks were still ongoing, and he can't see the can't just see the light that it's just not going to work out for him.
Who's this? Who's it?
Angus Grant.
Angus Johnson.
Angus Johnson and the current Brisbane board are in mediation with the AFL and the Commission over the rival ticket that with Lee Matthews on it that wants to take over, and they've got enough. They've already accumulated twice as much as required for an EGM from memory.
Yep.
But Angus Johnson is still kicking the heels in and hanging on for dear life.
And Andrew Demetrio has expressed his support for Matthews as well, which is big. The AFL's also said it won't give the Lions its grant, like its extra grant to cover its losses this year, which are expected to be pretty big. A lot. We're talking like Melbourne size big, and they won't get that grant if there's no unity on the Lions board. So,
and then not to mention that, but they've also got the young players who are kind of leaving on exodus. From memory, it was the first two picks of 2010 and 11. Who have all signalled their intent to be traded home.
I'm not sure they'll miss Jared Pollock, but Billy Longer, if they can, there's talk that Billy Longer's wants to get shopped back down to Victoria, and he's 2 years in the system, and he's probably another couple of years from being a real player, but he's a goer. I think Pollock's probably a bust, but.
Didn't they have Carnesis and Doherty or someone as well?
Yep, and Elliot Yao or whatever it is.
Yeah, all good players.
Well, I think Carnesis is a slightly wealthy man's Patrick Vez Premier. I'm not that keen on Carnesis, but I think Longer's the prize out of that group of guys.
Yep, and last on my list of things, the AFL has announced that if there's a draw on the weekend, that there will be a replay. And it will be the week after, and it will be a twilight game, apparently.
Oh, please don't let there be a bloody replay. I don't think, after last bloody Friday night, not to mention the fact that I'm going broke here. How about you, Seppo? You going broke?
Well, it's not me that I'm worried about because I'm based in Melbourne, but I would absolutely feel for all the supporters that have travelled and absolutely forked out not to get a result on the day. But the good thing is with the 2010 drawn grand final, the second one was less corporate and more fans. So depending on the result, and you never know, some people might be happy to get to the second one, but I suppose it all depends on the timing and what can be organised in between and how many flights they'd put on at a short period of time.
You'd have to think it would be the end of the replay if it happened. If they basically disenfranchised tens of thousands of Docker supporters, it'd have to be the end of the replay.
I don't think so. I think the AFL's fairly fixed on this.
There's only so many Docker Fockers you can arrange.
And to be honest, I wouldn't be against seeing how this Twilight Grand Final plays out. I'm not necessarily suggesting that it should become a full-time thing, but I think if it is a draw and the Twilight Grand Final does come about. I think it's pretty obvious though that the AFL will look to sort of bring that in more full time.
I think it's definitely a test of the waters.
Yeah.
But then again, it's all conditional on there being a replay in the first place, so, you know. Alright, we're going to move into the games on the weekend. But first we might have a quick break.
You raise me up, will you help me down? Will you get me right out of this God-forsaken town? Can you make it all a little less cold? I can do that. I can do you care to every fantasy I got. You hold me down with holy water if I get too hot. Would you take me places I've never known? I can do that. I can do that. I know the territory I've been around. It'll all turn to dust and we'll all fall down. Sooner or later you'll be screwing around. I won't do that. Oh, I won't do anything more love. Oh, I will do anything more love. Oh, I will do anything more love. But I won't do that. Oh, I won't do that.
And ladies and gentlemen, we're back and we're talking about the preliminary final wraps from the weekend. And so first up, we're going to look at the Hawthorn and Geelong game very briefly with Messenger having eliminated the losers from the podcast this week. So, sorry SJ. But on the weekend, Hawthorn 14-18-102 defeated Geelong 15-7-97. That's quite a goal discrepancy there. But it's where am I? Goals for Hawthorn. Gunston kicked 4, Burgoyne kicked 3, Hale, Hill 2 apiece. Guerra, Bruce and Franklin all kicked 1. Geelong goal kickers, Johnson kicked 4, Motlop kicked 2, Christensen, Hawkins, Vardy, Bartel, Selwood, Guthrie, Taylor, Murdoch and Caddy 1 apiece. The best for Hawthorn. Mitchell, Burgoyne, Gunston, Hale, Birchall, Guerra and Hill. And for Geelong, Johnson, Motlop, Guthrie, Selwood, Taylor, Stokes and Duncan. For injury-wise, Whitecross did his knee for Hawthorn. 85,569 people watched this game at the MCG. Messenger. How did the game come about?
They did, and might I say that all those people, the missing 5,000 were not the MCC members. The MCC members was full. This was heart-in-the-mouth stuff. I think it took reduced the life expectancy of the vast majority of Hawthorn supporters who were there. This was a case of Hawthorn nearly shooting themselves in the foot with bad kicking. They had a 20-point deficit at three-quarter time, kicked 4 goals, 8, and Geelong only had 2 scoring shots in that last term, and they just fell over the line in the end. But really, 12 months ago, they probably would have blown that one completely and from 20 points down. So I think if we can say anything about Hawthorn is that they're resilient. Jack Gunston was excellent. He's having a very, very good final series, and he's going to be a very interesting matchup on Saturday. Roughhead and Bruce are probably concerns. They were very, very quiet, and Brewster's kicking radar's gone way off. Another guy who's having a terrific final series is David Hale. He's been very good in the 2 finals we've played. But this was just a real bun fight from one end to the other. Really hard-hitting game, a lot of tackling, but Hawthorn moved the ball well. And to coin the phrase of the moment, lowered their eyes and hit a number of targets inside forward 50.
All right.
All right.
Yeah, Eddie.
Mess, last year I did a feature article for one of my university assignments, and I spoke to you and I spoke to a couple other people about the effect that the Hawthorn-Geelong rivalry of recent years has actually had on a Hawthorn perspective. How is it to actually break what is the Kennett curse?
How does it feel?
How does it feel?
It It's not nearly as I always imagined it would be a euphoric moment. I think we were relieved more than anything. I mean, I was in the pocket where the Geelong were kicking to in the last quarter, and I actually ducked my head. I couldn't watch that Varco ball sail through because I figured he dobbed it. But to get over the line, I don't know if we were happier about being in the grand final or happier about being Geelong. But right now, I feel like we've done it, and but it's not that sort of feeling of amazement I'd always thought we'd have after 5 years.
Sean Burgoyne well, him and Mitchell were probably best on ground for the Hawks, and those in Hawthorn's late surge, Burgoyne was involved. His forward pressure was fantastic. He was he basically created the goals for Gunston and Hill, and kicked one himself. He's really stepping up. But he probably hasn't been the player for Hawthorn I thought he would be, or the player that he was at Port. But he's certainly going great guns at the moment.
He is, and I think the thing with Burgoyne is he's probably had that Port form in little bits and pieces, but we haven't ever seen 4 quarters of Sean Burgoyne the Rolls Royce. We probably get glimpses of it, but he's spent a lot of time being injured. He came to the club on crutches essentially and spent 18 months getting right. So he's coming into form at the right time. And just one other note on Sam Mitchell, that performance of 37 touches, 11 clearances, that was one for the ages on Friday night. That was right from the top shelf of Sam Mitchell, and it seems a shame that he hasn't got a Brownlow. And they talk about Selwood and they talk about Swan and Pendlebury. Well, Sam Mitchell's in that same sentence, and he gets overlooked a little bit. But my God, that Friday night performance was staggeringly good.
I must say, I was so impressed with Mitchell's performance. I was watching that game, and the thing that Mitchell stood out for me the most was the way he showed a bit of composure. And like you mentioned before, I think it was the third or fourth quarter when it was just frenetic football. Everyone was just kicking. No one was sort of taking that extra split second. I don't know if he was just bending time, what he was doing with the ball, and just taking that extra split second. You could see it on the TV. Mitchell would just deliver the perfect passes out of congestion that I thought was quite impressive. And I don't know if that's going to attract the Crowley tag, but it certainly was the difference, and I think he was the driving force to actually getting Hawks over the line.
Well, I don't think there's any question that he's going to get Crowley on Saturday. I think that's an absolute given.
He's just painted a target right on his back the way he performed.
Pretty much, yeah.
I think I heard Mark McClure say that Mitchell was probably a touch better than Greg Williams on the weekend. So that was high praise indeed.
His CV is not quite in the Williams category. He doesn't have either Brownlow, but he's a 4 times best and fairest winner in an era where Hawthorn's. Essentially, he's been the best player and one of the best teams in the league.
Well, he'll win it again this year, won't he?
Oh yeah, he'll win it again. He'll get his 5th. He's mostly his internal competition will be Roughhead and Gibson, but he'll get a 5th this year. I don't think there's any question of that either.
I also wanted to spare a thought for Brendan Whitecross, second ACL. He's going to miss another grand final.
And he did the last one in the qualifying final in 2012. It's a terrible shame, and we've had a terrible run with ACLs. We've had Alex Woodward, who's rehabbing from his second. Max Bailey's had 3, and we've had Ryan Showmakers missed almost all the season. Matt Suckling did miss the entire season with an ACL, but Whitecross was back pretty quick. He was a 9-month turnaround on his first one. It was the same. It was his repaired ligament that went again this time, so I don't know whether Lars is on the card. Hawthorn have never used the Lars surgery before, but the interesting thing was he came back and he got straight back in the best 22, and he was never a question about him being on the fringes. The Monkeys off the back. I think it frees Hawthorn up a bit. I think there's a case to say, they've played their grand final and that'll be it. I think it frees them up. I think it says, we can do it. And I think we'll see that on Saturday.
Was the extra week off telling in the end?
Yeah, I think so. I think it always is. I think history says it is. And you saw what happened with Sydney over in Perth on Saturday. They looked like they were on their knees after 10 minutes. And I think the week off at that point in the season always makes a massive difference.
I suppose the downside for Geelong is they didn't have Chapman out of there. And I think he could have made a big difference. It's obviously helped Geelong along because he's finals player. So they obviously
He could have. But Steve Johnson played a brilliant game. We wondered who the hell was playing on him for the first half. He was very, very good. So they just didn't get that many opportunities. They really didn't down there. And I'm not sure. The inside 50 count was pretty lopsided, if I recall correctly. But they were, it was Steve Johnson was very, very good.
64.
One thing that impressed me as well is young Bradley Hill, brother of Stephen, was that first. I think it was the first quarter. He was looked like he was getting bullied and targeted by James Kelly and some of the other Geelong senior blokes. But the way he just stood up, I think he earned himself a couple of frees and won a lot of his own ball. I know he's an outside player, but it was good to see him stand up and actually take those hits and play really well.
Well, it might have been me who was suggesting he should be dropped for Cyril Rioli last week. And I think the knock on Hill has always been that because he's light framed, he's probably not really suited to the heavy contact inside game that Hawthorn play a lot of, and they come up against teams like Geelong, and they will against Fremantle on Saturday. But he was very, very good, and I was pleasantly surprised at how well he played on Friday night. I think he's really come along as a footballer, and it is, interestingly, the first grand final in 100 years in which two brothers will play against each other.
All right.
It's going to be a great match up the Hill brothers.
Indeed.
For this, when the siren sounds, the purple haze, they won't need a bus or a plane. They'll walk, they'll ride, they'll hitchhike, do what they can to get there.
Going to be some sort of night in Perth tonight. They are going to go absolutely berserk.
Sandilands, an opportunity here. Smith gathers, looking for their first ever grand final. Fremantle will play Hawthorn in the grand final. Siren sounds, 25 points.
Okay, guys, we're going to move on to the other game from the weekend, which was, of course, the Freo game versus Sydney. And this game was played at Patterson Stadium, where Fremantle 14-15-99 defeated the Sydney Swans 11-8-74. Fremantle's goals came from Walters, who kicked 3, Pavlich, Fife, and Subin kicked 2 apiece. Crowley, Duffield, Neal, Barlow, and Ballantyne all chipped in with 1. For the Swans, Rowan kicked 2. Cunningham kicked 2, Jeddah, Parker, Bolton, McGlynn, Pike, Hannaberry and McVeigh all kicked 1 apiece. In the best for Fremantle, Mundy, Fife, Crowley, Walters, Duffield and Mzungu. For the Swans, McVeigh, Kennedy, Parker, Malcheski, McGlynn and Mumford. Fremantle's injuries included apparently a cut head on Spur. I don't imagine that will have been all that dramatic. And Johnson, who did a calf, and Pearce did a shin. Although Fremantle note there will be no real injury problems for this weekend. And for the Sydney Swans, McGlynn apparently cut his head. 43,249 people, the second largest crowd Fremantle has ever played in front of. Watched this game at Patterson Stadium on the weekend. And how did it all go down, Seppo?
Well, I took myself off to a pub in Carlton to watch this game along with 100 other Freo supporters. I was surprised at how many people rocked up to this pub to watch the game, and I went in there full of confidence, knowing the way that Sydney performed against Carlton. They just looked like they were running out of legs, and it was only going to be a matter of time before Freo blew them off the park. But the scoring shots obviously looked pretty dangerous for us, not being able to capitalise in that first quarter, kicking 2-9, and it was a bit of a worry whenever Sydney went forward. They seemed to get on the board, so obviously we stopped that soon once we actually started converting. It was interesting to see the scoring shots all missing to the right-hand side, and it looked like, because they were kicking to the lower end of the stadium, I think the two-tier side. Once the second quarter came around, they were kicking to the protected side. They just started to hit the scoreboard or seemed to move the ball more freely in there and take less set shots. So it was great pressure, probably the best pressure I've ever seen. I know during the media this week it's been compared to the Collingwood pressure of 2010 or 11 or whenever they were at their peak, and Saints have Ross Lyon's similar time, and I think it's some of the best pressure I've ever seen. The way it was just locked in Sydney's foot, it was just lambs to the slaughter. They just couldn't get through it, and it was exciting football to watch. And I don't know how many people bag on about Freo being boring to watch and Ross Lyon's dour game of footy, but certainly wasn't there. And from a Freo fan, the added excitement of the result just made the game so much more enjoyable than I've ever watched a Freo game in my life. And just the way you could see the players mentally conserving their energy in the last and letting Swans back into the game. We could have blown them off the park, and we were nearly up by 60 points in the last quarter, and then to let Swans get some real cheap ones and finish the margin off around 25 points was no big worry. So I'm glad that we sort of got through, minus those small little cuts and knocks and bruises. It looks like we've got through pretty fine. Full list available.
Seppo, was that second quarter was something to... It was really a quarter that you sat back as a neutral in any case, and just... It was sat in amazement at what was the Fremantle football in full effect. How does that rank as one of the best quarters of football you've watched as a Fremantle supporter, with that knowledge that that would likely be the catalyst for you going on to your maiden grand final?
Yeah, obviously I wasn't confident until I really saw those. I think we kicked 5 goals, 1 or 2 or something in that second quarter, but it's how we actually scored them was just showing when it counts, we can definitely turn it on. And it was just something, like I said, it was probably the best game, and that second quarter was almost the best footy I've ever seen as a fan of footy, and it's just great to obviously not be able to witness it live, but to watch that, I think puts most fans with a lot of confidence into us to be able to take it up to the Hawks.
I watched on Saturday, and I think it's in the second quarter. I think some bricks were being shat at that stage. Though it was a very impressive performance, it really was quite staggeringly good. The Swans, I guess, without wishing to put a damper on it, the Swans looked like it was a bridge too far for the Swans, wasn't it? They came in undermanned, and they were pretty much on their knees inside 15 minutes, weren't they?
Yeah, they definitely were. You could tell they were tired, but really, even though they had stars out there, I think it's really good that we did dominate. I'm not sure if they got. I think there were 1 or 2 inside 50s for that second quarter, and only put 2 points, I think, on the scoreboard. So
yeah, and
they came really late. The way we just dominated, I've never seen it before. And there's a lot of stats that we've sort of how we beat Geelong. Winning those hit-outs. I think we won them 50-16. We've won the hit-outs again in this game 53-30. So it's definitely that midfield battle that I thought that Sydney had a strength in, that they could have challenged us with, O'Keefe, Hanbury, Bird, all those guys. They really just, there's no reason why they couldn't play well. We just dominated them right from that middle onset.
When you're watching, what's the signal to you that these guys are absolutely on song? What are the things that you look at and go, today's our day?
I really think it's that midfield. The chemistry between Sandilands and Clark, and just it's almost winning that centre clearance. If Fife and Mundy and Barlow are streaming away from the midfield, I can just tell we're on. There's a lot of games, and I think where we struggled against Hawks earlier in the year down in Tassie, it was just hitting the ball, struggling to get clean first use and hitting to the opposition and winning the hit-outs, but not winning hit-outs to advantage. That's when I know things are problem, but obviously when we get first use and we're streaming out and all running forward, it's I know we're on.
I didn't watch the whole game, Seppo, but the bits that I was watching, I saw Chris Mayne getting back in defence to help out a few times, and I noticed he's had the highest tackle count he's ever had in his career, 13 tackles in that game. What role was he playing for you?
He's been playing that role all year. I actually heard some interview with him earlier on, and he was asked a question: would you prefer to, take 5 tackles or kick 2 goals? And he said 5 tackles. So he's a type of player that just loves that defensive, that manic-like pressure, and loves doing the team thing rather than the glory of kicking goals. So he's a very unselfish player, Main. He's one of my favourite.
And on a personal note for you, Seppo, this is new ground for you. It's grand final week, and you've got a horse in the race. How have you found it? I mean, how have you found grand final week as a Fremantle fan?
Obviously, the build-up was there even before this game. I suppose there's a lot of Freo fans getting ahead of themselves. So obviously, a lot of excitement on the board. Just talking about grand final, the ticketing. That it's the first time going through this whole process of the nervous energy. And this week is just been one hell of an exciting ride. And I just can't wait for Saturday to come around. I can't believe it's only Wednesday.
Yeah.
All right, I guess it's time to move on to the grand final preview, which we will do shortly after this break.
Well, you put a lot in and you worked real hard. There were days when you tried, there were days when you started trying to please the crowd when they're unforgiving. There are easier ways to make a living. Well, we've come a long way since the start of things, when we've seen the joy that hard work brings. You've made us cry, you've made us smile. You've hit the front, now it's all worthwhile. 'Cause there's one day in September we want to remember. There isn't any doubting we'll be in there shouting. Football's such a part of this whole town, and we know that you won't let us down. Well, there's nothing better than a nice good win, and there's no second prize if you let them in. You've gotta give your best and then give again. Out there's no such thing as friends. Well, we've been our best and we've been our worst. If we do it right, well, we'll come home first. We gotta get in there and make them sad. We'll hit them hard and take the flag. 'Cause there's one day in September we want to remember. There isn't any doubting we'll be in there shouting. Football's such a part of this whole town, such a part of this whole town, and we know that you won't let us down. 'Cause there's one day in September, in there and fight. 'Cause there's one day in September, show 'em your might. 'Cause there's one day in September, don't let 'em in. Football's such a part of this whole town. Football's such a part of this whole town. And we know that you won't let us down. 'Cause there's one day in September, in there and fight. 'Cause we made it to the final. Show 'em your might.
And we're back from yet another break, and we're going to be talking about the big match, the grand final between Hawthorn and Fremantle. This will be played on Saturday at 2:30 p.m. at the MCG, where all good grand finals have been played. Yes, I'm overlooking the 91 grand final, Messenger. Too bad for you. And,
Bastard.
in their last 5 meetings, Hawthorn have only played Fremantle once at the MCG. In round 11, 2011, Hawthorn 17-9, 1-11, defeated Fremantle 13-11, 89. Most other games have been played at Aurora or Patterson Stadium.
I'm surprised the grand final wasn't relocated to Aura to give Hawks the home advantage, like they've seemed to be doing to Fremantle all year.
Just a little bit of bitterness creeping in
Jeez
there.
Louise, you've got the jammiest run in the media. I had to turn on the radio. I couldn't even work out who Fremantle were playing in the grand final.
There is a lot of love for Freo this year, and I think we're fed up with seeing the same teams play off in the grand final and win stuff. And I think there's a lot of people around that are going, if someone has to win the grand final and it's not my team, it may as well be Freo.
Well, Hawthorn are absolutely wearing the black hat this week. Where it's everybody wants to write about the fairy tale, and fair enough, it would be a fairy tale if it occurs. But yeah, I haven't seen Hawthorn written off this comprehensively in the week leading up to a grand final in quite a while. So it's very interesting take. A lot of people leaping on the Dockers bandwagon very late. Jared Healy's quite pleased.
The AFL website brings up a couple of points, as it always does. The Hawks have dominated the Dockers recently, as we've established, 3 wins by more than 50 points. But Hawthorn held an overall 20-7 head-to-head advantage over Fremantle. It's a grand final, though, and strange things happen. Hawthorn is shooting for its 11th VFL AFL Premiership in its 17th grand final. Hawthorn have won 4 of its last 5 grand finals, dating back to 1988, and have reached consecutive premiership deciders for the first time since 1988, whereas Fremantle will be playing in its first grand final in 19 years. Should Fremantle win, Pavlich will have played in a premiership in his 291st senior game, the third longest wait in VFL AFL history behind Shane Crawford and Paul Williams at Collingwood. Shane Crawford's wait was 305 games, apparently. Who knew? So there was a bit of a drought there for Hawthorn somewhere along the line. Regardless of the result, Sandilands will become the tallest player ever to play in a grand final.
Well, that's the important thing.
And that's what the AFL website does. It provides the critical information. Hawthorn have far more grand final experience than Fremantle. I don't even know why they've even bothered to bring that point up. 23 Hawthorn players have played in at least one grand final, with 10 having played in 2 or more. The Dockers have only 2 players who have played in a grand final: Dawson, who played in 3 with St Kilda, and Daniel Pearce, who played in Port Adelaide's 2007 loss, or as they call it over here, the not grand final.
I'm sure Daniel doesn't go around talking about his grand final experience.
Both yeah, I've played in a grand final before. Both Clarkson and Lyon will be coaching in their 3rd grand finals. So, interesting stuff. Also interesting, during the week, Fremantle apparently chose to play in the white strip rather than the purple one, Seppo. What's going on there?
Yeah, well, it looks like the AFL approached Freo and said there's going to be a clash with purple shorts and purple top. They gave them a choice, saying you're going to have to wear the white shorts, and you can either wear your purple top with the white shorts, which we have done on a couple of occasions this year, or go the full white strip, and they were the one that actually chose to go the full white strip rather than the purple top, which is something I don't mind. It's going to be the first time a side's played in a full away white strip, I believe. But initially I didn't get the whole clash, with purple and brown. You look at all the photos they've had on the preview sites, Franklin against Pavlich, and there's definitely no clash there. But the only downside is when you're looking at the shorts of brown and purple, if it was like a muddy game, really hard to see. I suppose a good contrast is required, and the only interesting fact will be at the end of the game, if Freo do win, will there be a change of strip? Will they get into their full purple kit for the photos, or will they just do it all in white? Will be quite interesting.
Well, it could be worse in times past, and you can ask St Kilda fans about this, but they used to swap jumpers with the other club at the end of the game, and so St Kilda's 1966 premiership sides all wearing Collingwood jumpers for their premiership photos.
It's one of the stupidest traditions I've ever heard of.
Well, I think that we inherited it from English soccer or something, because it was quite widespread up until about 1980, and then all of a sudden it just stopped.
They still do it through European football to this day, swap shirts at the end of games. You see it through the World Cup and everything, everyone swapping shirts over. But I think it's a great thing that Hawks get to wear their brown shorts, because they're certainly going to need to cover up the stains once they start to crap themselves under the Freo pressure.
He's bringing the fire.
The weather forecast for Saturday: minimum of 10, maximum of 16 showers and possible morning storm. So cloudy, scattered showers, isolated thunderstorms and hail clearing by early afternoon. A little bit of wind about the place. So it's going to be a wet day, fellas. And look, we'll hand it over to the neutral guys to discuss first, and then we'll get... I'll give you guys 5 minutes each to make your case. Prosecutor.
Yeah,
how are you seeing the game?
It really is the irresistible force and the immovable object here, and it's going to be a fascinating encounter. There is that bit of excitement to see Fremantle. as you said before, it can be you can get rather stale when you've got the same sort of quartet of Collingwood, Sydney, Hawthorn, and Geelong competing in grand finals. So I'm really interested to see how Fremantle come out and attack the contest because there was that bit of apprehension going into the Fremantle Sydney preliminary final that Fremantle might not be ready for the pressures that are a preliminary final, a home one at that anyway. And they well and truly blew away any of those doubts. So I'm very interested to see how Fremantle do go about it, and how Hawthorn go about it as well, because there was a bit of a sense that Hawthorn that all year that Hawthorn's grand final was going to be Geelong. Now, obviously, Fremantle interrupted those plans, but Hawthorn did just conquer that demon, and you just wonder if maybe Hawthorn has truly is prepared themselves all year for facing Geelong in the grand final, and maybe they left it all on the field last week and how they actually pull up this week. Odian?
Yeah, Hawthorn have won their last 3 games against Fremantle by 42, 56, 51. Freo haven't kicked a goal in the first quarter of any of those games, so it's really, really important that they settle the nerves very quickly, and because we know Hawthorn are battle-hardened and finals experience, so it's important for Freo to sort of overcome that and try to hold Hawthorn early. I note the last time they played, Hawthorn absolutely smashed Freo in uncontested possessions. It was at York Park, granted, and Birchall had 37 disposals. Most of those are uncontested. So, it's unlike Freo to let teams, get a run on them like that. And it's going to be interesting on the wider MCG to see whether Freo can block the space that will stop Hawthorn from getting those little chip kicks in and working their way up the field as accurately as they usually do. Seeing Roughheads, there's a little bit made during the week about Roughhead sort of not really getting amongst the goals, and I think he's got 3 goals he's kicked in his last 5 finals. So I don't, rather than think that Roughhead's somebody that will go missing, I think he's due. I'm thinking that Roughhead and Franklin will be playing forward with Hale and Bailey doing all the ruck work, and I hope we don't have to see Ruffy in the ruck at all. Freo, they won their last 8 of 9 since Sandilands came back, and just smashing everybody in the ruck. And that game they lost was obviously their reserve side playing against St Kilda. So impressive late form. So you don't know what to read into that round 4 encounter and the previous encounters they've had with Hawthorn, because Freo are a completely different side now. I think they fell over the line in some games early in the season, or just missed out, like against Essendon, and they looked a bit scrappy. But gee, they look a far cry from that side once Sandilands and McFarlane came back into that side. Hawthorn have more forward options. I think they have greater flexibility up forward, at least. So if Dawson, McFarlane, Johnson are sort of handling Ruffy and Franklin, they have that option of sort of Gunston, Hale, Burgoyne, running through there. They can go tall, short, faster, or it depends. And they can change it up according to the conditions and the circumstances of the match. So Freo's defence is going to have its work cut out for them. I think Hawthorn, they're minor premiers for a reason, and I think having a real, genuine fullback in Brian Lake back there, certainly, defence was considered a little bit of an Achilles heel, or potential Achilles heel for them in the past, but they look a lot more stable. Freo do bat deeper in the midfield, so I had concerns there, but Hawthorn have more what I would term elite or cream players. So it's sort of like, Freo's momentum versus Hawthorn's experience and battle hardness, and I've flip flopped on this game all week, so I'm really not sure what to think.
All right, we're going to get into the two guys that actually got vested interest this weekend. We'll start with Messenger. And what's the Hawthorn perspective on the game this weekend?
I guess when we talk about the irresistible force and the immovable object, I think it's worth pointing out that Hawthorn's defence is actually the 5th best in the league this year, and it's certainly no turnstile back there. The form line between the two teams is really patchy, and we Hawthorn and Fremantle are a one date a year type arrangement, and the last time we played, Fremantle were missing pretty much most of their tall timber. Lake hadn't played a game for Hawthorn yet. It was actually the game that Ryan Showmakers went down with his ACL early on in the piece, and Brent Guerra didn't play that day either, which is reasonably significant. This is again going to be about holding possession, being able to overlap and disrupt that tackle pressure that Fremantle generates, and again creating options in the forward line, keep rotating around, and hopefully getting Dawson in particular, but also McFarlane into some positions that they're not entirely comfortable with, and the question will be how they choose to deal with Buddy, because Buddy has been he played quite high against Geelong, whether they have McFarlane run around with him and whether he's got the fitness level to go with Buddy, and which would mean that Dawson would get Roughhead in the square, and then again it's a question of how Gunston standing up, and Bruce, who's having an absolutely shocking season with his kicking. He's a 50-50 proposition at best in front of goals, and how he deals with it. So, look, 2012 was about missed opportunities and wasted chances, and I think this group appreciate it, and I think they know their window's very short, and I think the mental side of things I don't think is going to be an issue. It's going to be one of execution and one of playing their game and not allowing Fremantle to squeeze them out. Seppo?
Yeah, well, looking from a Freo point of view, obviously you can write off all sort of previous head-to-head games against these two sides, but it's what Freo can bring and what Ross has done with his team and the way they've just shaped them up to be able to play finals footy. You just hear Ross constantly talking about, it's the season that actually counts and starts from week 1 of the finals. Obviously, we've had some losses during the year, but the way that we've just timed our run, it leads me to feel a lot confident with Sandlands getting form at the right time, Pavlich coming back in, McFarlane and our All-Australian defender Michael Johnson back into the side, and them taking it easy at the end of last week means that we can actually face Hawthorn with a fully fit squad that's absolutely primed, which we have not been able to do for forever, for all I can remember, all of our games against Hawthorn. So the interesting thing will be for me, and the way this game will work might even come down to these conditions, because the thing that presses me about Hawthorn and the way they can actually hurt us is with the elite kicking skills that they do possess through the midfield, and actually right through all the lines. But it's predicted for a couple of showers, and if it's hitting right when the ball, if it the drainage is not going to be a problem in the MCG, but if it's greasy conditions and we can put the pressure on and force some of those guys, the worst 5 out in the ground for Hawks to start turning it over, that's going to help Freo go a long way. And just the dominance, like I mentioned before, when Freo are playing well, they're winning those centre clearances, and Sandilands and Clark are just dominating. And I know a lot of work has been talked around how good Sandilands is, but I think this year Clark, for mine, is one of our most improved, and he's had to step up. With Kepler Bradley and John Griffin going down, we've had our own injury issues like the Hawks have had early season, and had to shuffle some players around and get games to our youngsters this year. So it's great knowing, though, that we've exposed our list. We've got some young guys in there like Sutcliffe and Lockie Neal that will surprise a few that haven't watched too many Freo games. These are guys second year on the list that can really contribute, and they just, I think we'll be able to handle the pressure. But I think it will all come down to the skills and which side actually takes their chances in front of goals. I can't see Freo winning the game if we start with 2 goals 9 again like we did against Sydney. I think when we push forward, we've got to get on the scoreboard. And you just look at Hawks last year in their grand final. They didn't take the chances when they had the chance to hit the scoreboard. Freo can't afford to do the same.
All right. So thanks for that, guys. Who is going to win then, in our opinion? I mean, obviously, Messenger and Seppo are going to vote for their respective sides, but who do we think is going to win, Prosecutor and Odion?
Well, I'm sensing a bit of deja vu from last year with the red hot favourite in Hawthorn going down to a rather unexpected side in the grand final. I think Fremantle, as Seppo alluded to, have really hit the straps at the right time, and there's that sense of maybe a perfect storm. And I think it'd be great for football too. So I'm going to go with Fremantle by 12 points.
Odion?
Yeah, as I said, I've flip-flopped on this game all week, and I was getting a little bit carried away with the Fremantle fairy tale. The end of the Hawthorn-Geelong game really affected me, really swayed me, because there was no way I saw Hawthorn getting out of that, especially against Geelong, who had the wood over them. I was impressed with how composed they were and how they shut the game down once they got in front, and it just reminded me of the silk that they have in that side. And the elite players, Hodge and Mitchell and Rioli and Lake and Ruffy and Franklin, and they Freo do have a game that will worry them, but Hawthorn haven't exactly been quelled by Fremantle's game in the past. I think I'm just going to say, look, they're minor premiers for a reason, and they have something to prove. So I'll say Hawthorn's going to get up by about 15 points.
I still believe that this game is as big a candidate for a draw as any we've ever seen. I think the game is going to be inordinately close. I think Freo's game style lends itself to shutting down opponents quite easily, and they proved against Sydney that they can not let them score basically in the last closing minutes of the game. And if it comes down to that, Hawthorn might well find themselves a little bit screwed at the end. I don't think there's any coming back from behind to that point. I don't want to be one of those clowns that tips the draw though, so I think Freo are going to win. I think it's purple all the way this year, and I'm tipping probably around 7 points total. So
I find it intriguing that in grand finals, apart from the odd outlier or two like 2008, it's typically defense that comes to the floor as opposed to the offense that you might see throughout the year. So I reckon it might lend itself more to Fremantle as well in that aspect. That if Fremantle can, suffocate Hawthorn and bring this score down, I think that's going to go a long way to helping Fremantle win their maiden premiership.
Yeah, I fully agree. Fully agree.
All right, guys. Well, who's your tips for the Norm Smith? I've thrown money down on Fife as soon as the odd comes up. He was paying $26, so I think Fife's the type of player for Freo that will stand up there on the day when it counts and attract the guys doing the votes for the Norm Smith.
I think
$26. Shit, I'm all over that.
$26. It's shortened right up now. Fife's now into about $7 or $8, so I jumped on really early. He's the type of player that will be key for us in final.
I think Sam Mitchell in a losing side will win the Norm.
They don't give Norm Smith to... Nathan Buckley stopped that. They don't give Norm Smith to losing teams anymore.
Didn't Judd get one? 2005?
Yes.
Yep.
I think it was when Buckley got his in...
He got his in 2002, was it?
And pretty much threw it across the field when he got it.
I don't think it'll stop him doing it, and I think Mitchell will get it in a losing side.
I think if Mitchell's, I'd say if Mitchell's best on ground, Hawthorn have probably won the game.
Yeah. So who's Crowley going to go to?
He's going to get Mitchell for sure.
Yeah, no worries. Look, I'm going to state something fairly obvious. If Luke Hodge isn't right up there in the voting for the Norm Smith, then he's probably dead.
He only has to take the field though when there's always a love-in with Luke Hodge, and he just magically gets all this attention anyway. He doesn't even need to perform that outstanding. He just it's part of the legend and that is Luke Hodge.
I've had a go at Luke Hodge for being a match review panel favourite and stuff this year, but he is a genuinely classy player, but he's as tough as anybody I've seen. So he would match Lee Matthews for toughness.
When I say the Luke Hodge legend, I mean as in the fact that he's got that similar sort of aura that Jonathan Brown has, whereby an ordinary act by any other player gets multiplied by about 2 or 3 when Jonathan Brown does it. Like if he's taken a contested mark or whatever, it gets elevated and all that sort of stuff. And I guess Luke Hodge is the midfielder / halfback equivalent of Jonathan Brown.
What about the goal scoring options at either end, like Pavlich and Franklin, and Roughhead for that matter?
Well, the guy, I think Franklin really, he's got a lot of inside 50s. I think he had 6 or 7 inside 50s on Friday night. But the guy who's kicked most of the goals has been Jack Gunston. So I guess the question then is, how do Fremantle use Mzungu on Gunston, or do they, because he'll play high and so you'll need somebody who can run. And we talked last week about whether Geelong went with a running type guy on Gunston or whether they went with a body player, and they ultimately went with Rivers and he pantsed Rivers. So I wonder whether Mzungu's probably the guy to go with Gunston, but they've Hawthorn have mostly spread it out this year. It was a little bit narrower on Friday night. They only had a few goal kickers, but they get a lot more goals from the midfield than they ever used to.
Seppo, how important is Chris Mayne going to be for a winning score to be kicked?
Obviously, like he for the tackling pressure he provides, he's gets keep on talking up as the gun straight shooter, and he's been off his game. I think the last few games, commentators put the moz on him, and he's not that much of a crucial goal kicker. I think it's more or less the turnovers and the marks and bringing the ball down to guys like Walters and Ballas that I think if those two smalls hitting the scoreboard, that's when I know we're doing well. Mayne doesn't need to hit the scoreboard for us to go a long way to winning, so he's more the team player. It's not going to be like Gunston will be for Hawks in terms of the equivalent, like the third tall or the guy that sort of plays high up the field.
Yeah. Ballantyne's probably one of the main Fremantle players that motivates them, inspires them, gets them up and about, and can really shift the momentum in a game. Who would generally play on him, Messenger?
On Ballantyne. Well, I don't think he gets a tag though, really, does he? So whether Ballantyne he plays like cross half forward, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. Birchall's probably a little tall for him, and I think Birchall may get Mayne, and I'm thinking that probably Walters will get Brent Guerra. So it might be one of the guys rolling back who'll get Ballantyne. It might be somebody like Brad Hill or Isaac Smith who might roll back and get him. But it'll be interesting to see whether they use Ballantyne and try and get into their heads a little bit and get in the heads with one of the running guys, and whether they use him more as a stopper or somebody to shake the tree a little bit in the midfield. I
You'll
know
probably
Seppo
see.
might have a better idea of
No,
who might
you're
get
pretty much
bumped
spot
up.
on there. Guerra, I'd reckon, would go to Walters, who's more of our permanent crumbing forward that seems to sit there. Ballantyne does like the runs through the midfield and onto the wing and play a bit higher up, so I'm not sure if that will lend itself to Birchall or one of the other guys, but I'll probably see Smith and Muzungu being a match-up on the wing. Obviously, good two-way runners, and they obviously cover both of them a lot of Ks in the game. I'd love to see Stephen Hill and Bradley Hill match up on either wing, opposed to each other. It would be great to see them, like the great commentary of what Bruce done last year with, was it Rioli and Jeddah, I think. I'd love to see a classic bit of commentary with the two Hill brothers chasing each other down. I think it will be nice for the highlights package to see that matchup happen.
All right, guys.
Who's the lucky player to get a grand final berth at the expense of Whitecross?
There's been a couple of, I guess the consensus is there are three choices there. Shane Savage has had a very good VFL form since he's been down there. He had a exceptionally good preliminary final. He kicked 5 goals in that prelim against Werribee. Jed Anderson is the guy who got tipped out of the prelim in favour of Sil Rioli, so you would have to think that he's perhaps first cab on the rank to come back. But the other guy who really put his hand up from the grand final on Sunday was Jonathan Simpkin, and he was best on ground in the grand final win against his old team. And he is a hard-running, good ball user, good head on young shoulders type of player, and he might be the smoky who makes the team as a sub. But my money is on. I have a feeling they're going to lean towards Savage. I think maybe they think Anderson's a little young, but Savage is the sort of guy. My only concern about Savage is the sort of guy who needs to start. He tends not to make an impact as a sub. I personally hope they choose Simpkin because I think he's the guy. He gets on and he's instant impact when he gets on as a sub.
So do you think it'll just be the one change then for Hawks Messenger? Because Freo will probably go in unchanged and might just split the sub between one of the youngsters, either Lockie Neal or Cam Sutcliffe.
I don't see them making any other changes. Look, the guy who, if there was anybody who needed to be worried about their place in the team, it's Luke Bruce, just in terms of his actual goal-kicking production. But he is doing enough in terms of the setups and goal assists and forward 50s and the forward pressure to probably keep his spot. And I think Alistair Clarkson's history has been he backs the guys he's had all year. I don't see him getting dropped. I don't think you'll see any surprises. I think it'll just be somebody to replace Whitecross. I guess the other thing I was interested in too, Seppo, is how have you found with the way teams have played Clark? I mean, Clark's the guy I'm more worried about in some respects than Sandland, because Clark's the guy who's going to be actually able to generate space because he's a better runner than either Hale or Bailey. I'm wondering, how have you seen teams deal with those guys in the past? Have they gone tall with them the whole way through, or have they sort of really played that sort of small, sub out the big for the small later in the game?
Yeah, it's interesting to see if during the game they do sub out Bailey again for probably the 1,000th time this year. I know that Clark can do really mobile, athletic things around the ground. If he does have a slow, lumbering ruckman trying to play on him, he tends to burn him off and does track a smaller opponent. But Clark, if he can get the delivery, he can be very damaging in the air as well as around the centre clearances. Obviously, his follow-up work is second to none. Once he's jumped up for the ruck tap, he's down there chasing and even working on the clearances. So, and he's a great runner. Obviously, you don't get that from Sandlands because he's obviously his first use is his best attribute. But Clark around the ground, I'd back him in against the likely ruck opponents of Hale and Bailey, and even Roughhead if it eventuates.
My suspicion is that they will sub Bailey out, and then I think you'll probably see Roughhead match up with Clark, because Roughhead is basically plays as a ruck rover. When he goes in, he's equally good on the ground. The issue will then be Hale having to go with Sandilands in the last, and Hale is really not a number one ruckman, he's a number two ruck. and really he's there because he can go forward late, and he'll do 20% of the ruck work in the first 3 quarters, and he'll do every hit out in the last term. So that's the issue. But I don't see them, particularly as they do it for run as a general rule, I don't see them not subbing Bailey out unless there's an injury.
Okay, guys, we've got to move on very quickly. And what are you expecting, or what are you looking forward to the most this weekend? Messenger?
I don't know if you look forward to anything when you're waiting to go to a grand final. I think it's probably only just hit me now that it's on its way. I mean, it's early in the week, you don't really think about it, but I believe in these guys, and they're not. They've had a really good season, and I think they can take premiership number 11. There's a certain low key feel to this build up for the club, and I'm looking forward to singing a song at the end.
What about you, Seppo?
Well, the thing I'm looking forward to most is rocking up to the MCG on Saturday for my first grand final with my team and taking my regular spot right behind the goals in row A of the cheer squad and leading our Purple Army and just being loud and having a good time. Obviously for the first time, and I tell you what, if we win it, I will be going absolutely nuts. So I really hope that the team can put in and deliver the goods for all the thousands and thousands of fans travelling across this one.
And Prosecutor, what are you looking forward to this weekend?
Well, always on these big occasions, such as Anzac Day and finals, there's nothing that gets the hairs on the back of the neck rising like the roar at the end of the national anthem and that sense of inevitability that the big day was just about to start. And as always, I'm looking forward to that moment.
Yep. Odion?
I'm looking forward to humble winners and gracious losers on the Bigfooty boards.
Really?
Well, I can always hope, can't I?
I'm looking forward to Bigfooty shutting down again.
I look forward to having to moderate the Hawthorn board. It'll only require moderation if there's one result, but oh dear, I think you just give it a few hours and you go and lick your wounds if you need to, and then you mop up later. But yes, we're all gracious at Hawthorn, very gracious.
We're happy to.
No, I love the grand final, but I look forward to next footy season. That's what I look forward to. I hate this off-season rubbish. It annoys me. Full of cricket and other gay sports.
Oh, you're not going to do a trade podcast, a trade week podcast?
Oh no, we'll be back next week for a review of the grand final, obviously, and Seppo and Messenger will both be back for that, hopefully. And hopefully.
Oh no! I'll tell you what, I'll be here, win, lose or draw.
It's a grand final, so we're going to do a fair review. Hopefully we'll get you guys both back, and then after that, we'll probably have some sort of season review and other stuff. But we'll probably keep going right up until, part of trade week anyway. Apparently it's a trade month or something this year, so I don't think we'll run for the whole thing. But you never know, because family men like yourself and ODN need time to have a break and perhaps a step back from your fame for
Well, to see my kids, what's their face and who's he what's it.
Pretend pretend like you care about them for a little while.
Yes, small person. Yes. Why do you smell of feces? Oh.
No, so we will be having a break, but we'll at least we'll cover the grand final. We'll probably have a season review and look at the trade prospects coming up, and then we'll break until trade week. So there's that coming.
Indeed.
All right, so we'll sign off, and good night to and good luck to both of you, Seppo and Messenger.
Yeah,
no worries. Thanks for the best wishes.
And have a good day, Seppo. Enjoy it, mate.
You too.
And when I say
don't be a sore loser.
And when I say good luck,
you either.
And when I say good luck, I don't really care who wins. it's much of a muchness for me.
Made the best team.
It's not Collingwood or Essendon.
No.
So-
it's-
Oh, well, we all know Essendon was the moral winners anyway, so
and
that goes
good
without
night to
saying,
you,
doesn't it?
prosecutor.
Oh, no, yeah.
might not be the ethical winners, but who's counting that?
Yeah, good night to you, prosecutor. Thanks for coming on again, mate.
No worries. Cheers.
And good night, ODN. See you tomorrow night.
Yeah, see you guys.
All right, and good night from me. I'm the Wookie, and it's been a great season. We'll see you next week.
Walk down to catch a tram to my favorite ground. Use my legs